All right, Baruchim Haboim, welcome everybody to the Shiur in Mesechta Megilah. We are going to start our daf right now by going to our Shiur.
I always forget to mark where we stopped.
I will explain to you once again where we are. We will see it in a moment. Oops. Going back over here. Okay, and we're on daf Dalet Amud Beis. I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit because it's a bit too big. Okay. We're going to enlarge it now so that we get the whole daf. All right, so we have the whole daf in front of us. That's daf Dalet Amud Aleph, and we are going to daf Dalet Amud Beis, and we are on daf Dalet Amud Beis. We are now the last word on the widest lines on the bottom.
The first line, Rabbi.
The second line, last word.
Okay.
Okay, that's where we are up to. All right. Once again, L'zeichen Nishmas Yitzchok and Nissen Eliezer. We're getting to work. I just want to make sure the cell phone is turned off. There we go. We learned last week a statement up here in the following case. It said, we have a brisa, Kol Lios be'erev Shabbos. If Purim falls on Erev Shabbos, Purim va'ayoros gedolos, villages and big cities, Magdimin liyom haknisa.
Right.
Go back to the day of gathering, which is Thursday, right? Umukafin Choma, the walled cities, Koram Bo Bayom. They read it on Friday. That's the brisa at the beginning. Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says, Omer Ani, I say. We pointed out last week, I'll refresh your memory. The words Omer Ani are often used only by Rebbe because he was the authority. Omer Ani, I say, Lo Yitchu Ayoros Mimkoman, that cities do not get pushed away from their place. Whatever day Purim falls on, the city reads it on that day, with the exception of Shabbos, of course, as we're going to see. But when it comes to every other day, Lo Yitchu Ayoros Mimkoman. And that's why, in this case, when it says that it fell in Erev Shabbos, the Kfarim and the Ayoros Gedolos go back to the Yom HaKnisa, according to the Tanakama, and Rebbe says, Omer Ani, Lo Yitchu Ayoros Mimkoman, that the big cities do not leave their place. Ela, Elu ve'elu Korin Bo Bayom. Both the walled cities and the regular cities read it on Friday. We go back to where we are now. The last word on the second line asks the Gemorah, you just claimed that Rebbe says that cities are never pushed off. Ask the Gemorah, V'savar Rebbe Ayoros Lo Dachinan Liyom HaKnisa. Can you really say that cities are never pushed back to the day of the market where everybody comes together, like the big villages? I'll prove to you that Rebbe himself says that big cities can be pushed back to the Yom HaKnisa. Well, Tanya, we have a brisa that says, Chol Lios b'Shabbos. If Purim falls on Shabbos, Kfarim Magdimin Liyom HaKnisa, villages go back to the Thursday. The Ayoros Gedolos Korin Erev Shabbos. The big cities read it on Erev Shabbos. This is not Rebbe. This is the Tanakama. Umukafas Chomer Lemachar. And the walled cities read it on Sunday, because Sunday is the 15th. So if Purim falls on Shabbos, which it could not do today, then big cities are going to read it on, according to the Tanakama, they go back to the Yom HaKnisa. Rebbe Omer, Ayoros Gedolos, according to Tanakama, the big cities read it on Erev Shabbos. That's the Tanakama. Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says, Omer Ani, again, those famous two words, only Rebbe says that. Omer Ani, I say, Hoel v'nitchu ayoros mimkoman. Since, anyway, big cities are going to be pushed from their place. What's the place that big cities should read on when it falls on Shabbos? What's the place that the big cities should read if Purim falls on Shabbos? Shabbos. But they have to be moved, because you can't read it on Shabbos, as we're going to learn the rest of the Shiur today. So Rebbe says, Hoel, since, Robani, I say, Hoel v'nitchu ayoros mimkoman, since cities are moved from their spot, Yitchu liyom HaKnisa, let them go back to Thursday. If you remember at the beginning of the Shiur tonight, we learned on the top here that Rebbe says that you don't push them back to the Yom HaKnisa. But here, in this brisa, we see Rebbe Omer Ani, Hoel v'nitchu, since they're being moved anyway, because they can't read it on Shabbos, Yitchu liyom HaKnisa. Hoel v'nitchu, ayoros mimkoman, Yitchu liyom HaKnisa. So how could you say Rebbe says you don't go back to the Yom HaKnisa? Here we see Rebbe says you do go back to the Yom HaKnisa. I'll review that one more time for those who didn't get it, but this is the last time. Here we go. On the top over here, Rebbe said, Omer Ani, Lo Yitchu Ayoros Mimkoman, that when it falls on Erev Shabbos, the big cities don't get moved from their place, but they read it on Erev Shabbos. And now the Gemorah asks, V'savar Rebbe Ayoros Lo Dachina Liyom HaKnisa? You telling me that Rebbe holds the big cities can't be moved back? Well, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Chol Liyos b'Shabbos, if Purim falls on Shabbos, Farim Magdim Liyom HaKnisa, villages go to Yom HaKnisa, V'Ayoros Gedolos Korim B'Erev Shabbos, that big cities read on Erev Shabbos, that's a Tanakama. And the walled cities read it Sunday, that's Tanakama. Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says, Omer Ani, I say, Hoel v'nitchu ayoros mimkoman, Yitchu liyom HaKnisa. Hey, right here, it says Yitchu liyom HaKnisa. How could you say Rebbe never says go back to the Yom HaKnisa? Here in this brisa, when it falls on Shabbos, you see Rebbe did say it goes back to the Yom HaKnisa. Okay, that's the kasha. Answers the Gemara, no problem. Hachi hashta. And whenever you see hachi hashta means, how can you compare the two? Hachi hashta, over here, how can you say that? It's not the same thing. Hasam, over there, when the case was, in this last case, Zmanam Shabbasu, the day of the reading of the Purim was on Shabbos, because that's when the 14th came out. The Hoel v'nitchu. Anyway, you can't read it on Shabbos. It's going to be pushed off somewhere.
Right.
And it's got to be earlier, because it can't be later. Hoel v'nitchu, yitchu. Therefore, you push it off to the Yom HaKnisa. The Hacha, but in the case on the top, where we said, Rebbe says you don't move it, Zmanam Erev Shabbos, right? The time for reading it is Erev Shabbos. Why should we push it to the Yom HaKnisa? Since Erev Shabbos is anyway the time to read, let the Ayoros read it on Erev Shabbos, and the Mukafos will read it also on Erev Shabbos, and the villages will read it on Thursday. We don't push the Ayoros to Thursday because they can read it on the day. But when it falls on Shabbos and they can't read it on the day, then we're going to move it to somewhere. Now, if you can't read it on Shabbos, what's the first stop you would make to move it to? Friday. But since we're moving it already, let's make it better for everybody and make it to the Yom HaKnisa. So even though Rebbe holds normally you don't move it, but once it's moved, then you move it back to the Yom HaKnisa. Okay, so that settles that. That settles that. Okay. All right, is there any Rashi here? Let's take a look. No. Yeah. Here it is. Rashi says over here, Hocha Erev Shabbos Manam, the Ein Lechot Sorech Litchosan. And there's no reason, therefore, to move it back to Thursday. And that's why Rebbe says you don't go to Thursday. Okay. Next, Gemorah. Here we go. We're about to come to the big topic of the day. Ask the Gemorah. Kiman Azla, Oda Omer Rebbe Chelbo, Omer Rav Huna. I have a statement that was said, by Rabbi Chelbo and the name of Rav Huna. Who does this go like? Purim, Shachal Liyos b'Shabbos. When Purim falls on Shabbos, Hakol Nitchin Liyom HaKnisa. Everybody goes back to Thursday. Yes, the Gemara. What? Hakol Nitchin Sal Kedaitach. Everybody doesn't go back to Thursday. We already said that everybody doesn't go back to Thursday. Why are you saying that? Ika Mukafin. Don't you have the walled cities, the Avdei Lemachar, that read it on Sunday? It's the Gemara, Ella, no. What Rav Chelbo said in the name of Rav Huna was, Ella Kol HaNitche. Any of the three possibilities, big cities, villages, walled cities, any one that's going to be pushed off, Yitzchok Yom HaKnisa, should be pushed off to the day in which everybody gathers, right? And come on, who does that go like? Rebbe. That is the one that goes like Rebbe. End of sugya, of pushing back. And which ones we push back? Lahalacha, we only push back villages when it comes on Friday. When it comes on Shabbos, we push the villages back to Thursday. The big cities read it on Friday. The walled cities read it on Sunday. Okay. The next Gemara is a Shas topic Gemara. And we're about to enter into the portals of a very fascinating sugya. So let's put our thinking caps on and take a look at this sugya. The Gemara, here we go. Starting with the word the Kula Alma, we are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom. The Kule Alma Miha, okay, nevertheless, everybody holds Megilah b'Shabbos lo karina. That you don't read the Megilah on Shabbos. Everyone holds you don't read the Megilah on Shabbos. Because you see that when the Megilah falls on Shabbos, what do? You push it back to Friday or to Thursday. But no one reads it on Shabbos, right? So the Gemara is going to enter into this question. The Kula Alma Mia, but everybody does agree, Megilah b'Shabbos lo karina. My timer. What's the reason you can't read the Megilah on Shabbos? What's the problem? Omar Rabba, famous statement. The Rabba, famous. This statement, and you'll see on the side, you see, comes up in Pesachim, Sukkah, Rosh Hashanah, right? And it comes up at least 4 times in Shabbos. And it's a famous statement by Rabba. Omar Rabba. Rabba says, here's the reason. Hakol chayavin b'kriyas Megilah. Everybody is chayav in the reading of the Megilah. You got that so far? Everybody's chayav in the reading of Megilah. We're skipping Tkiyas Shofar, even though this same statement applies also to Tkiyas Shofar, and also applies to taking of a lulav. But our sugya is only with the Megilah, and so kol chayav b'kriyas Megilah. Everybody is chayav to read the Megilah. Ve'ein kol b'kiyin b'mikra Megilah. But not everyone is expert in the reading of the Megilah. Not everybody is an expert in the reading of the Megilah. And since not everybody's an expert in the reading of the Megilah, we're worried, Gezerah, that the Rabbanan made a Gezerah, therefore, because not everyone's an expert, Shema Yitlena Biyodo, maybe a person will take the Megilah in his hand, V'yelech Eitzel Baki Ililmod, and he'll go to an expert to learn how to read it, because I'm chayiv in the reading. I'm chayiv in the reading, and if I'm
don't think he went before Shabbos to learn Megillah. He had to wait last minute to teach learn read Megillah.
Oh, you don't know any Jews who are last minute, huh?
No.
No, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, but obviously there are many who will wait till the last minute. They just happen to have that nature that they wait for the last minute, and it's not the last minute. They'll take the Megilah and they'll read it. They'll go to the Bucky on Friday evening and read it 3 hours later after they learn how to read it.
Oh, Friday night, right? Friday. Okay.
All right. Okay. So therefore, we're worried. Shema, here we go. Shema Yitlena Biyodo. Maybe he'll take the Megilah in his hand. V'yelech Eitzel Baki Lilmod, and he'll go to an expert to learn. V'yavirena Arba Amos B'Shus HaRabim, and he will then go and walk with it in the public thoroughfare Dalet Amos. And walking Dalet Amos in Rishus HaRabim is an Isser De'o Raisa, and therefore, to fulfill the mitzvah, the Rabbanon, of reading the Megilah, we don't want you to be in a situation where you may transgress an Isser De'o Raisa. So we're not going to allow the reading on Shabbos.
Even if it's the right, they stop. Shofar and lulav.
You'll have to hold on to them.
Oh.
Because the Gemara now says, V'hainu time of the shofar, and that's the exact same reason behind shofar, V'hainu time of the lulav. And that's the reason behind lulav. Shofar, if Rosh Hashanah comes on Shabbos, we do not sound the shofar. And if the first day of Sukkot comes on Shabbos, we do not take the lulav on the first day, even though it says "Ulekachtem lachem bayom harishon." We do not take the lulav. Says Rashi. V'yavirena arba amos, right? B'shus harabim, right? Can you avoid this? Says Rashi. Va'afilu lon basada. Megilah biyado, even if he's out in the field where there's no Rishus HaRabim, and he's got the Megilah in his hand, yesh ligzar ala davar. There's still a gezerah. Bishum lo plug. We don't make a distinction. No matter where you are, you can't read the Megilah, because you can say, "Oh, I got a way to get around this. I won't be in the Rishus HaRabim, and since I'm not in the Rishus HaRabim, it's not a problem, and therefore I'll be able to do it." Rashi says no. There's included in this gezerah was even when you're in the fields. Okay, that's the statement in the Gemara. Tosfos has a field day. Here we go. First, Kasha and Tosfos. Here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. This Tosfos is a crucial Tosfos. Appears a few times in Shas, and it's the kind of Tosfos that we have to put into our pockets and walk around holding it in our pocket, even though on Shabbos,
not Shabbos, not right on Shabbos.
But it was a back pocket Tosfos. You're going to say, "Oh yeah, that's a famous Tosfos. I know that." Here it goes. Kosher. All right. He asks Tosfos. The Gemara said, Rabbah made a gezerah. Rabbah said, Chazal made a gezerah that the reason you can't read the Megilah on Shabbos is because he may go to an expert and he'll be carrying it Dalet Amos B'Shus HaRabim. Wait a minute, yes, Tosfos. Kosher. Amai lo ka'amar, why didn't the Gemara Rabbah say the Yotzi Enemesh Yosayachad and Mishos Harabim? Whoa. Wait a minute. Going from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim is forbidden on Shabbos. Why are you telling me that the reason you can't go to an expert is because you may carry your Dalet Amos in the Rishus HaRabim?
Right.
You got to get to the Rishus HaRabim. You go from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim is just the same exact transgression. Why didn't Rabbah quote that as the transgression? You all hear the kasha, right?
Yeah.
I'll do the kasha.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Tosfos answers, I'll tell you a few. No, I'm sorry. Let's go back. Rest of the kasha. The Yosienim the Urcha the Milsa Havetvei, because it's more likely that you've got the Megilah in the Rishus HaYochid and you're going to go out to the Rishus HaRabim than have it already in the Rishus HaRabim and carry a Dalet Amos in the Rishus.
Yes, get there.
You gotta get it there.
Yeah.
So why did Rabbah use this? Yeah, the Kasha guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Answer number one. The Yesh Lomar. The answer is very interesting. To Rishus HaYochid and Rishus HaRabim. Because to go from a Rishus HaYochid to a Rishus HaRabim, lo to'u inshi. A person doesn't make such a mistake. Aval, zimnin, but there are times Megilah kaima kvar Rishus HaRabim. Sometimes the Megilah might even be in the public sphere. V'yavirenu arba amos begavo, and he may therefore carry it Dalet Amos in the Rishus HaRabim. All right, this is a very interesting answer. When you have a Megilah in your house, when you're in your home, right? So if you've got a Megilah in your home, you are going to have to take the Megilah and go out of your home and go into the Rishus HaRabim. That's not something that a Jew who's a Shomer Shabbos is easily going to do. While if the Megilah is in the Rishus HaRabim, to carry Dalet Amos Rishus HaRabim is not as clear a demarcation line. Look, for you to walk from the Rishus HaYochid of your house to the Rishus HaRabim, you got to open the door and walk out of your house. That's the kind of action that is very clear to you that you're going from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim. But when it comes to walking Dalet Amos and Rishus HaRabim, how many feet is Dalet Amos? Does everybody know how many feet is Dalet Amos?
4 feet, 8.
But which one?
8.
Anybody else? Obviously, it's not so clear. The truth of the matter is 4 feet is 7 feet. 4 amos is 7 feet. A little less than 8. Okay. Unless we go by the largest measurement of an amma, then an amma is 2 feet. That's the opinion of the Chazon Ish. But the opinion of Rov Poskim, beginning with Rav Avram Chaim Noah, that it's only 18 inches, 6 feet. And according to Rav Moshe, it's 20, right. According to Rav Moshe, it's 22 and a half about, so it's closer to 2 feet, but not quite 2 feet, so it's about 7 feet. About 7 feet. The point is this: when you're walking in the Rishus HaRabim, do you know where 7 feet begins and 7 feet ends?
No.
That's not something everybody can point to. It's not something we know, right? You understand this?
Yeah.
So the Rabbah doesn't bring up the case of going from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim because that's not as likely. The more likely scenario is within Rishus HaRabim going 7 feet. There's a lot of musar in this particular statement for a Jew to walk out the door of Yiddishkeit is not as usual as a Jew who's already in the public sphere to transgress a little bit because everybody else is doing it and you can't tell the demarcation line. In the Rishus HaRabim, it's harder to see where your Rishus HaYochid and Rishus HaRabim begins and ends. So a person has to be aware that there's a difference. And the Gemorah is making an obvious statement. Rabbah is making a clear statement that the Isser is in the Rishus HaRabim, because that's not so clear. Going from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim, wow, that takes a big step. That's a big step. And it's not likely that's going to be that way. Okay. So anyway, that's the first answer. Why didn't Rabbah mention going from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim? Because it's not as likely. Here comes the second answer. V'od yesh lomar. There's another answer. Here's the reason he didn't mention Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim. Lefi, because it's possible. It's possible when you went from Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim, you didn't transgress the biblical command of carrying from one Rishus to another Rishus. How could that be? Says Tosfos, Kagon, that's what it says over here on the side, that's what it should be. Kagon, Shalo Hayasa Akira Rishona L'Shem. Oh, now, in order to carry on Shabbos, you need two actions. The Gemara on Shabbos, at the very beginning, the first Mishnah explains that, and the Gemara explains, Daf Beis, what's necessary in order to transgress carrying on Shabbos is two actions. One is Akira, picking up, and the other one is Hanocha, putting down. If you take something from Rishus HaYochid, if you pick up something in the Rishus HaYochid and put it down in the Rishus HaRabim, then you've transgressed going from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim. If when you picked it up, your intent was to pick it up in order to put it in Rishus HaRabim, you have the two actions which make carrying. One is Akira and one is Hanocha. But what if you made the Akira not to carry it out? In other words, let's say you had the Megilah in your dining room and you picked it up to go into your living room to read the Megilah in your living room. And then after you already picked it up in your dining room for the express purpose of reading it in your living room, you decided to go outside and ask a Bucky how to read. So now the Akira was not for the same purpose as the Hanocha when you stepped outside. The Akira was not to go into the public sphere. The Akira was to stay.
But they took another Akira from the dining room outside.
No, he made
another one.
No, he made the Akira in the living room.
Right.
And when he got to the dining room, he just kept walking and decided to go outside. So the Akira.
Oh, he didn't make it up. Okay.
The Akira was not to go outside. The Akira was to go to the dining room. He just decided to go outside. Okay. So the Akira and the Hanocha are not connected anymore. The Akira was one thing on the inside, and it was only for staying in the inside. While the Hanocha was an afterthought later, and so the two parts of the Malacha are not for the sake of doing the Malacha. And consequently, he's not going to be chayav korban chatas. Says Tosfos, therefore, because there are times his purpose in picking it up wasn't for the sake of carrying it out. Like somebody who's picking things up and moving them around from this part of the house to that part of the house. On Shabbos, you could do. And then he said, I'm going to carry it out. The potter may I timer. Say he's going to be potter from going from the Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim. So here's a scenario where the person went from Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim with the Megilah, but he's potter. He's potter because he didn't do Akira and Hanocha with the purpose of carrying it outside. So to review the Tosfos, we have two answers. One is because to go from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim, Loto Inchi, people don't usually make such a mistake because it's too stark a difference. But when you're already in the Rishus HaRabim, it's hard to figure out where 7 feet begin and 7 feet end. And the other answer is because it's possible that you did not actually do the Malacha because you picked up the Akira with the intention of moving it to another place in the house, and therefore there's not going to be any Shiur. Okay, so that's the plain explanation of why we do that. Okay. Now, there's more to this, but let's go to the next Tosfos first. Let's go to the next Tosfos first. Okay. What are the next part of that statement? V'yavirenu arba amas b'shus harabim. He may carry it daled amas in the b'shus harabim, right? Okay. Are there any instances in the Torah whereby something's allowed to be done on Shabbos and we're not worried you might carry it in b'shus harabim?
Megilah.
So the Tosfos asks about Megilah.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. What about the mitzvah of Megilah? You're allowed to do a Megilah on Shabbos, even though Megilah requires the transgression of one of the 39 malachas. By the way, what transgression is there?
Drawing blood.
Okay, so chover, okay? All right, chover, which is under shchita. Okay. There are other things that are possible. That's not our topic. Here we go. Says Tosfos, Avo Megilah, but when it comes to bris Megilah, the Shabbos, ein litchos. You don't push Megilah off, saying, "Oh no, he may carry the knife in b'shus harabim." Why not? Daha chamira, because Megilah is a very strict law. Shekein nichisu oleha yud gimel pisos, because as the Gemorah in YIBE says, there are 13 covenants attached to bris Megilah, and those 13 covenants include that if you don't give a bris Megilah to your son, you're chayiv kares. So bris Megilah has very strong reasons why we don't make a gezerah. Since it's such a powerful mitzvah, therefore we don't apply v'yavirenu daled amas b'shus harabim. That's one answer. We're going to have other answers. The Gam, second answer, ein adamo ela imkein have baki.
Right.
Wait a minute. Megilah, you might want to read, and you're not an expert. But no one is going to go make a bris Megilah if he's not an expert. The sakana yesh b'dova. Because there's a sakana. You could kill the kid. And since only experts do it, we're not worried you're going to go to an expert to learn how to do bris Megilah. Interesting halacha in bris Megilah. We know that the father has a chiyuv to make a bris Megilah on his child. You know any fathers who do the bris? Almost none. There are some who do, but the majority overwhelmingly do not make the bris. Why? Because they're not experts in it. They're not taking a chance. Would they make the bris during the week even? No. Not unless they themselves learned how to do Megilah. In fact, the Shulchan Aruch brings up that if a father is not a moel on a regular basis, but he wants to practice doing bris Megilah in order to be able to do bris Megilah on his son, he cannot practice on Shabbos. Because if he makes a mistake, he will be drawing blood unnecessarily or mutilating unnecessarily. So therefore, we see that there's a special din of a baki. And a baki we're not worried about. Okay. Let's stop there for a minute.
There's a thought that a father would be allowed to take practice on Shabbos.
No, you can't practice on Shabbos.
I know, but what was the thought that yes?
No, we said you can't. This guy wants to practice because he wants to make the Megilah on his son. We say you can't
Practice on the week.
practice during the week on a doll or whatever.
Then they can do the Megilah on his son.
No, not until he's certified that he's expert enough that he won't make a wound.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's not so simple. Okay. Now, the Meiri comes along, and he has a number of different approaches, and there are a number of different approaches which are available to explain some of this. We didn't get further yet, but up to this point, there are a number of interesting interpretations over here. Okay, first of all, when it comes to shofar and lulav and Megilah, those three are dependent on the calendar. You can't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah because you might carry a Dalar Amos and Rishus Rabbah. You can't carry a lulav on the first day of Sukkot because you may take a Dalar Amos and Rishus Rabbah. And you can't read Megilah when it comes on Shabbos because you may carry Dalar Amos and Rishus Rabbah. But each of those three things are dependent on a calendrical cycle. Rosh Hashanah is dependent on the first day of Tishrei. Lulav is dependent on the 15th day of Tishrei. And Megilah is dependent on the 14th day of Adar. So it's dependent on a date in the calendar. And the Meiri said, but wait a minute. But Megilah has nothing to do with the calendar. Megilah has only to do from the day the baby's born. Count 8 days.
Right.
When it comes to calendar, says the Meiri, we have a rule in the Gemorah, Anan ein bekiyin b'kviya diarcha. We are not experts at setting up the calendar. Now, even though today we are, but we just read this, this past Shabbos when we spoke about Achodesh Lochem, Lochem afilu ho'im. Even if you make a mistake in the calendar, let's say the Bezdin mistakenly proclaims today as the new moon, right? When really it should be tomorrow. But the Bezdin pronounced today as the new moon. Do we say it's the wrong date when Pesach comes and we're all eating?
So we do it Pasha by leap year, right?
What?
That's why we do it Chapos Pasha and by leap year.
No, that's a different thing.
Oh,
But no matter what, if it's for that reason, we should say it all the time, not just leap year. It's a different reason. Chazon Ish has an interpretation on why the Chapara is Pasha, and that's because what we're doing in a leap year is we're adjusting the moon calendar, which Hashem gave us as our calendar, and we're making it fit to the solar calendar, which is a Goyish calendar. And whenever a Jew has to make adjustments to be like the sun, Chaparas Pasha. That's the way he explains it. Okay. Anyway, to go back to our discussion. So Lulav and Shofar and Megilah are dependent on the calendar. And Anan ein bekiyin b'kviya diarcha. We're not such experts. And even if we make a mistake, we know that that's the day. But nevertheless, maybe it's not the right day. Therefore, since it may not be the right day, how are you going to transgress Shabbos in order to do a mitzvah, which may not be a mitzvah, because we're not experts on that day. But when it comes to Megilah, we know is the 8th day. We count from the day the baby is born, 8 days, and make the bris. End of story. It's not a matter of kaviyas. A non-sadi, we can be a testimony. That's it. 8th day. That's what it is. It's the 8th day. That's one approach. That's one approach to the difference between Megilah and with the other things. Okay. The Ritva has another approach. He says the Torah has an open statement that says Uviyom hashmini yimol b'sar orlos. On the 8th day, you have to make a bris milah. So how are you going to come along as a Rabbanan entity and make a gezerah that's going to go against the word of the Torah. You're going to ask me.
Hey, Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot also.
Like I said, you're going to ask me.
Yeah.
In the Torah, it also explains that you're supposed to blow the shofar on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, and you're supposed to take the lulav on the first day of Sukkot. So let's say this year it comes on Shabbos.
Yeah.
I won't do it this year, right? But next year I'll take it on the first day. Let's say Rosh Hashanah comes on Shabbos this year. Next year it's not going to come on Shabbos. So I'm not going to be wiping off the mitzvah totally. But if you tell me that because of Shabbos, I can't do Bris Milah because Shema Yavi Mena Dalet Amos B'Shus Haradim, what you've just done is you've gotten rid of the whole institution of Uviyom Hashmini, Yimo B'Saro Loso. You can't wipe off a Doraisa law because of her rabbinic enactment. You may be able to postpone it, but you can't wipe it off. So Kriyas Megilah and taking of Lulav and taking of Shofar is different than Bris Milah. Because Bris Milah, you'll be totally wiping it off. And
if you do the 9th day, you're not wiping it off.
No, it's not the 8th day anymore. It's
You
have to do it on the 8th day. So it's not going to do it. You're not going to be able to do it. Okay. All right. Okay, let's ask another question. We don't read the Megilah on Shabbos because maybe you're going to go to a Bucky and you're going to ask him to teach you how to read. Let me ask you a question. What about Kriyas HaTorah?
Right.
What about Kriyas HaTorah on Shabbos? Why do we read the Torah on Shabbos?
Yeah, we do it every week. So,
Therefore, good, no? Therefore.
Yeah, so something like that. I don't know.
So when it comes to reading the Torah, believe it or not, the Tosfos Yontif says everybody's a Bucky in reading the Torah. If a person does Shnayim Mikra Ve'echad Targum throughout his life, there's a good chance he can read a good part of the Torah. Maybe you won't get all the trup right, but you've learned the Psukim so many times, you may even become a little bit of an expert on the reading of the Torah. And it's quite common that there are people, maybe not as many today, because unfortunately the level of expertise in Torah has diminished, but over the centuries, there have been many, many people. Even today, in many communities, you can find 2 or 3 people that in a pinch could open up the Sefer Torah, glance at a tikkun for 15 minutes, and end up reading it. So therefore, it's not the same as Megilah, because Megilah is a totally different thing. It's not the kind of thing that everyone does all the time, and it's such a long thing. No one's going to be expert in it, and they're going to make mistakes like crazy, and you're not going to be Yotzei the Mitzvah. Now, the Gemorah and others come along, and they have another approach. Reading the Megilah is a chiyuv on every single individual. The Kriyas HaMegilah is a chovas hayochid. It's a requirement of every single Jew to read the Megilah and to hear the Megilah. What about Kriyas HaTorah? Is that a chiyuv on the individual? Or is it a chiyuv on the tzibur? It's a chiyuv on the tzibur. This does not mean, God forbid, Rabbi Snow said that I don't have to read Kriyas HaTorah. Oh my goodness, absolutely not. The chiyuv of reading the Torah each Shabbos is a chiyuv placed on the tzibur. I'll prove it to you. We just went through a period of time in which we didn't hear Kriyas HaTorah for about a half of a year. When was this?
COVID.
During COVID. Are we chayiv in shul to go back and read all those parshios?
No.
No, why? Why not?
Well, there was no tzibur.
No, there was no tzibur that ever read the Parsha.
I'm sure there's a million somewhere. Somebody had a million.
There were many minyanim.
Yeah.
There were outdoor minyanim.
Right.
There were illegal minyanim, so to speak. But there were many minyanim that read the Torah. It's not that the Torah wasn't read. It's just that an hour shul it wasn't read.
Oh,
But the Parsha was read every week. Consequently, since that's a chovas hatzibur, it's not the same as Kriyas HaMegilah, which is a chovas hayochid. And even though it's a greater mitzvah to hear the Megillah with everybody else, because B'Ravam Hadras Melech, but nevertheless, the chiyuv of reading the Megillah is a chovas hayochid. And since it's a chovas hayochid, you can't compare it, like the Tosfos Yontif wanted to say, to the Kriyas HaTorah, because the Kriyas HaTorah is not a chovas hayochid, it's a chovas hatzibur, and therefore, Megillah, we're worried you might take to go to a bucky and learn, because you're personally chayav in reading the Megillah. While when it comes to the Kriyas HaTorah, you're not chayav as an individual to read the Kriyas HaTorah from a Torah, chayav to listen to it when it's being read, because it's a chovas hatzibur. So we have a number of interesting issues over here in reference to this issue that has come up so far in this particular thing. Okay, all right. So now we can go on to the next question. Let's go try to finish up a little bit more. Okay? We have a few more minutes. Here we go. Okay. So he says, Aval Mila, the second Tosfos, the Shabbos ein litchos al chamira shekenichos alav yigdul v'isa. V'gam ein adam mol el im kain have baki. V'sakara yesh bedavar. Okay, next kasha. Ach nishal l'ri halevi. There was a question to the Ri Halevi, Yitzchok Halevi. Eich token b'motzai Yom Kippurim. Wow. How do we allow the tekiah on Motzei Yom Kippur? Now, it's true that ultimately it's going to be when Yom Kippur is over. But come on, maybe he'll go on Yom Kippur and go learn how to sound that shofar.
No.
Why not? We did it on Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do any melacha until you hear Havdalah, and you didn't hear Havdalah when you sound the shofar on Yom Kippur. V'su, and furthermore, Shema Yelech Eitzel Baki, maybe you go to an expert to learn how to sound that shofar. Kiddush Hayshina and B'Rosh Hashanah, Shechol B'Shabbos, V'im Kain, and if so, Hayolanu L'Mechash L'Hai Gezerah. Maybe we should worry about this Gezerah of sounding the shofar on Yom Kippur. It's a good kasha. Tosfos answers, the T rates, the answer is, the Mishum, the Tekiyah shofar, Chochma, the Malach. Wow. Sounding the shofar is not one of the 39 malachas. It's a Chochma. It's a talent. But it's not a malacha.
But yeah, with any musical instruments, it's not malacha. It's only rabbanan. You go to kids' breaks.
Okay.
You play musical, yeah.
Okay. So it's a chachma.
Yeah.
Okay. The gam also lo chayshin and shema yech lech eitzel baki the mishum tkiya achas. For one tekiah, you don't go to a bucky to learn how to blow the shofar. Anybody could pick up a shofar, go. Anybody. Might not sound it so great, but on Rosh Hashanah, there are inyanim of how long it has to be, how short it has to be, the combination of shvarm teruah by itself, and so on. That's a different thing. She'ena el mishum zecher liyovel, because it's only as a remembrance of the Yovel. Lo itzrich kule hai kirosh Hashanah de oraisehi. It's not the same as Rosh Hashanah, which is the Raisa, Vitzara Shloshim Kolos, and you need 30 Kolos. Okay. 30. With Rabbeinu Shmuel Omer, the Dafka b'Shabbos uva Rosh Hashanah, only concerned on Shabbos Rosh Hashanah, the Imaviro Arba Amos b'Shusa Rabim, Ika Isura de Oraisa Baha. Then you're transgressing in Issa de Oraisa. Vada yesh lochish. There you got to be concerned. Aval b'Motzai Yom Kippurim, da'afilu Imaviro de Oramas b'Shusa Rabim. Let's say a guy would do it. Let's say a guy would carry the shofar in Yom Kippur, Dalam Shusa Rabim. Lo have el Issa de Rabbanon. Baha. There's only an Issa de Rabbanon here. Vadai lo gozar, oh, it's an Issa de Rabbanon, not an Issa de Oraisa. Because it's after Shkia, it's after davening, and we're not worried. So the Tosfos went through this very interesting statement, which appears a few times in Shas, and gives us an insight into the various ways of looking at this. And we went through the Meiri and the Gra and the Taz, all the various different permutations of why it's not going to be usher in other areas. The fact that Bris Milah is based on the days from the baby's born and not based on the calendar, which is Anana Inconvenient, the Archa, and also the Tosfos Yontif's question of Kriyas HaTorah, because there it's a Chovas HaTzibur, but not a Chovas HaYochid. Well, when it comes to the Megilah, that's a Chovas HaYochid. Interesting, the Gra, the Vilna Gaon, says that every other Megilah is also a Chovas HaYochid.
Yeah.
The Vilna Gaon held that when you read Koheles, you have to make a bracha. When you read Shir HaShirim, you have to make a bracha. You read Rus, you have to make a bracha.
Eicha?
And when you read Eicha, you have to make a bracha. Consequently, he held that it had to be read from a parchment. It had to be read from a cloth. We don't paskin that way. But based on the Vilna Gaon, since it's a requirement for every individual to read it, there would be a prohibition on those days too. So it's fascinating, this very interesting statement of Rabbah. So we learned a few lines, but powerful lines about Rabbah's statement. Omar Rabbah, Akol Chayom B'Kriyas Megilah, Ve'ein Akol B'Kiyin B'Mikra Megilah. This discussion that we just had was based on the fact that everyone has a chiyuv to read the Megilah, right? You could ask a question. Look at this line. What was our question over here at the beginning of this Gemara, right? Kula alma miyah Megilah v'Shabbos lo karina. Everybody says you can't read the Megilah on Shabbos. My timer, what's the reason? Omar Rabbah, Rabbah says, Hakol chayovim b'kriyas Megilah, ve'ein hakol b'kiyim b'kriyas b'mikra Megilah. Why did Rabbah say this statement? Hakol chayovim b'kriyas Megilah. Why couldn't Rabbah just have said, Omar Rabbah, ve'ein hakol b'kiyim b'mikra Megilah? Why did he have to start with the words Hakol Chayavim B'Kriyas Megilah? Because of what we just learned. Because Megilah is a chiyuv on each and every one. I didn't have to mention that line. I could have just said, not everybody's a Baki, but that wouldn't have explained it. Because there's a Chovas HaYachid on Mikveh Megilah. That's why Rabbah starts out with Al Kol Chayavim B'Kliyas Megilah. When it comes to Parsha of Shabbos, not everyone's chayiv to read the Parsha, even though we're chayiv to read Shnai and Mikveh Targum, but we're not chayiv to read the Parsha in the Torah. That's the Chovas HaTzibur. Rabbah starts out by telling us, since Hakol Chayavim B'Kliyas Megilah, Ve'en Hakol B'Kliyas Megilah, Zay V'Shem Lena V'Yoda V'Yoda Chitzel B'Chalumah, Yarenim Abraham Special Saradim, V'Hainu Taima the Shofar, V'Hainu Taima the Lulav. And that's the reason for Shofar, and that's the reason for Lulav. Okay, Rabosai, we finished a nice sugya here.
Yep.
And I hope you enjoyed, and we're going to go to next Tuesday night, B'li Neder. Once again,
Rabbi, excuse me, next Tuesday night is the last
It's
Tuesday
good.
night until after Pesach, right?
right.
Right, but yeah, B'dikas Chovas I do the 2 weeks off, right?
Yeah.
I'm taking B'dikas Chumetz is Tuesday night.
2 weeks.
Not this Tuesday night,
Don't
the
rush me.
following.
Have
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
weeks.
Yeah,
Yes,
next
2
week
weeks.
and 2 weeks
Mhm.
off. Next week's on. Yeah.
Yeah. Thursday is Rosh Chodesh, so
Right.
right.
Yeah.
So that means it's only the 6th. And the Bedika is on the night of the 14th.
Tuesday night.
All right, Abosai.
Okay.
Rabbi Yashakoyach.
We stop the share here.
Rebbe, let me ask one question. Are we going to, is the Rebbe going to have a Zoom a little bit on the Godel?
We're having a Shabbos Hagadol in Russia.
I know, but like a little bit of to understand the Godel.
Well, this Thursday night's the last Thursday night share, right? This Thursday night-
Yes.
Thursday night, yeah. You want to do a little Haggadah this Thursday night in addition to the Parsha?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yes.
This Thursday night, yeah, it's good.
That would be nice, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Everybody who thinks that Reb Boro has presented a good proposal, contribute $100 to the shul.
Excuse me? What? I didn't hear that. What'd you say, Rabbi?
Everybody but Beryl has to contribute $100 to the shul. Beryl has to give 500.
Do me a favor. Tell Mordechai to contribute for me. Give me $100 too.
Okay,
He's-
we're gonna try to include on Thursday night some Haggadah things. Okay.
Anybody wants to be a part of the RSFC? Please contact Mordechai. He's in charge. He's the president.
But
And then-
you quitting? But you resigning?
Yes, Rami's taking my position.
Have a good
Rami.
night.
Okay.
Have a good night. You should all be
Have a
good.
good night, Rabbi.
Rebbe,
Shkoyach.
a gute Nacht.
Good night.
Well, gute Nacht.
So Thursday night, we're gonna do a little take care.